Alrighty, it is 7:02, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tiara Booker, and I'm the Adjunct Faculty and Instruction Coordinator. I'm located on the Catonsville campus. I want to thank everyone for joining us, for knowing the code. This is one of many webinars that we've held over the last few months. Today, I have the pleasure, who's joining us actually, I have the pleasure of presenting Dr. Stephanie M. Wright. She currently serves as the Director of Student Conduct. She joined CCBC in late February. She comes with many years of experience in higher education, specifically a background in enrollment management, student engagement, leadership development, fraternity and sorority life, and student conduct. And so, with this position, she has three folks who make a team of four in the student conduct office, who are responsible for sending faculty sanction, for sending notices for faculty sanctions, along with addressing behavioral matters in and outside of the classroom, as well as many other tasks. I'm sure she has a lot more things to kind of share with you guys, but I will let her do that. Just want to share with you, if you didn't know, the aim of this session is to familiarize those under my voice with the student incident reporting form, along with the process of submission, which includes thorough report writing. This is in order to discuss, the responsibility of the student conduct and as well as faculty. So she's going to talk a little bit about classroom management, the ins and outs of what to do in the event that something happens and you're like, what do I do now? Do I report this? She's going to share maybe some resources for students and much more. I'm going to leave it to her. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Stephanie right now. Take it over.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you. And I hope the presentation that I provide this evening will give you some clarity. I also want to make sure that you can always pause, say, excuse me, I have a question, right? So let's either practice using the raise your hand feature, or you can also unmute, right? I present to college students often, so I'm used to the random like, hello, have a question, because this is your time and I want to make sure that you walk away with what it is that you need from this. So I am going to, just to kind of set expectations, I'm going to share my screen. We are going to do some interactive things. So this is going to require you to be involved. It is a little late, so energy may be winding down. I see a hand raised. Yes.
So that's me. I'm sorry, I failed to mention. So we also have, I call this person our online operations manager. We have Tim Wallace, who's in the background, who will be kind of managing some things just to make sure that the webinar goes smoothly. Tim, say hello.
Yeah, thanks. I'm the online coordinator for continuing education. It's nice to meet you. And if you have any questions, raise your hand, or technical issues, let me know and I'll try to help you.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Stephanie.
Thank you, Tim. So yes, I want to do a combination of lecture, but also I need you to be involved. So we are going to have like a quick quiz piece. So that's going to require you all to participate. So I hope you're ready to do that. So just want to let you know, it'll be a little give and take. So I'm going to start with sharing my screen so that you all can see the presentation. Go here. And then there we go. So are we able to see the screen? Okay, I see a head nod. Awesome. So welcome to this evening's presentation. My goal will be to not just help you know about the code and the work that my team does, but also the different resources that are at your disposal to help serve you as well as the students. So again, feel free to ask questions. If you are shy or coming off mute, you can also put things in the chat. I will be checking the chat, uh, every now and again. And then I think Tim might also point some things out for me as well. So. So student conduct is actually a team of 4. So while I serve as the director of student conduct in Title IX, I do not do this work alone. I have 3 full-time staff members that sit at the main campuses, if you will. So they are a great point of reference for you as well, if for some reason you can't get in touch with me. But Marissa Hughes sits on the Dundalk campus. She's in the Lloyd building. That's what it's called now. Tony Elaine, he's on Catonsville, but he also helps us navigate issues that comes up in Owing Mills, Hunt Valley, and Randallstown. And then Dania Pope, who's on the Essex campus along with me. So we're all great resources. So feel free to reach out to any one of us when you have a question, even if it's a hypothetical, right? Like you're not sure, like, I don't know if this, rises to the occasion of an incident, but I want to chit chat with someone. Reach out. So once I started working here at CCBC, I gathered my team and I said, we know why we do this work, but when we think about our role here at CCBC, what is our actual vision and what's our mission? Because those are the things that should be guiding us. So I'm not going to read this to you because that's not how I present, but I want to share like the way that this shows up, this vision and mission shows up for us in action is making sure that through the conversations that we have with the students, no matter their age, no matter the incident, the conversations we have with you, that it's an opportunity to be developmental for all of us, right? And so if there was a misstep on the faculty part, it's an opportunity for us to talk about, hey, this is how we can improve this process later on, just for, your sanity, as well as making sure the student has a fair and equitable process. So at the root of what we do is really about student development and fairness and equity. So that is going to show up through our conversations. That's going to throw up through the accountability process, which I prefer to call student conduct accountability, because that's essentially what we're doing. If you are acting out in the classroom, if you are cheating on a paper, sitting you down and saying like, you messed up, right? That's accountability. And so I think that's a kinder word, and pushes us further away from being aligned with the criminal justice system, which a lot of people akin student conduct to is they'll say like, they're guilty of this. Well, this is not a court of law. And so we are about taking care of the whole student, right? And so a lot of that looks like digging in to try to see what's behind the behavior that you're reporting to us, right? So folks will call it like peeling the onion, right? We're trying to get to the root cause because there may be a lot more to the action than what we're seeing. So that's kind of how our vision and mission shows up in action. So I did tell you all there was going to be a quiz. So I got a couple of questions. I want to make it easy for you as we ease into getting to know each other and connecting. And this is what we're going to do. You're going to see on the screen the question, and you'll notice by each of the answer options, there's a different reaction, right? So we have the laughing emoji, we have the thumbs up emoji, and we have the heart. So this way you don't have to come off mute, but what I would like you to do is when the question comes up on the screen is to go to the reaction section in Teams. You'll see it at the top of your screen and choose your answer based on the emoji next to it. So if you think the answer to this one is failure to comply, you'll react with the laughing emoji. If you think that it's academic integrity, thumbs up emoji. If you think it's disruptive behavior, heart emoji. So let's get it going. Which violation of the code are you more likely to engage with? Let's see those reactions. All right, I saw some thumbs up. All right, I got another one. Awesome. Laughing emoji. All right. All right. Well, let's find out. Really all of the above, right? And the work that I've been seeing, so no one was wrong. I don't have prizes. You can just cheer yourself on. Um, and the work that I've seen, the reports that I've seen since I've started here at the end of February, the top behaviors that we're seeing is really all three of those, right? And so, of course, for faculty, academic integrity is at the top of your minds. You're thinking about artificial intelligence and cheating and plagiarism, right? Of course, those are some of the main things that you're going to be dealing with. But also, there's times that you may be looking at what's perceived as disorderly conduct or behavior. So disruption in the classroom, coming in late, which is not necessarily a code violation, but coming in and then like it kind of thwarts the entire curriculum for the day, right? Failure to comply with directives. And so that can look a little bit like if there was disruptive behavior and you've asked the student to leave your space for the day, for that class, and they do not want to comply, right? Then that would be failure to comply, because then you have to take additional measures. If it's online, then you're removing them from the course. If it's in person, then you're saying, hey, you got to get out. If you're not, I'm going to have to call public safety to have you removed, right? And so that escalates things. So while probably number one will be academic integrity, those other two aren't far behind. And so when we think about this work and we want to dig into some like proactive ways to limit any kind of those behaviors, what we like to tell folks is really about setting that tone that first day of class, right? I know we're having this conversation in November, but this really prepares you for winter and spring terms. But I like to be honest, right? This is what this class is going to look like. This is what we're going to do, and this is what we're not going to do. And so you're really setting those boundaries and expectations first day, right? Like I think we tend to go over the syllabus with them. But I think on top of expectations within the syllabus, it's also important to say, like, this is how I expect my classroom to look, how we're going to treat one another in this space. And that's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? When you think about the syllabus, making sure that it's clear and concise, right? What are your directives? And so I've seen a lot where students aren't sure if they can use artificial intelligence because one faculty member allows them to, another may not. And it causes some confusion for the student. And so it's really important that you break down exactly what those directives are. So if there's assignments that you're like, I want you to explore this tool, but on this assignment, absolutely not. Make sure that it's clear and concise in your syllabus, as well as expectations for group work. Everyone hates group work, right? And it's not too many folks who get excited about it because there's always one superstar. There's probably one person who's like not holding up their end of the bargain, but at the end of the day, we all get the same grade. And so even laying out that expectation so that later on, when there's some disruption in a group, when we need to talk to the student and student conduct, we have something to fall back on. Like I can clearly see in the syllabus that this is what your faculty member stated to you. So why did we sway from that? And then also private conversations upon noticing behavior. So if you're starting to see a student slip or go astray, I think what's important is to say, hey, student A, can we have a conversation after class or schedule some time during office hours or whatever it is and have a direct conversation? And that's where I like to say you're becoming curious about the student and understanding like what's happening for them and what's going on. In that conversation, you may find out that there are some needs that the student has that needs to be addressed. And that could be part of the reason that the behavior is occurring, or that student is just, taking a particular route. So having that conversation up front is important, and that's not something that necessarily needs to be reported to student conduct, but that helps with kind of being proactive and limiting some of the behaviors that I talked about before. Next question. What is the name of the report you file when you're reporting a student's conduct? Laughing emoji if you think it's care and outreach report. Thumbs up if you think it's student incident report. Heart if you think, okay, I see the thumbs up. Yep. Or heart if you think it's public safety. Yeah. All right. Exactly. You are all continuing to be winners. Student incident report. Now, the care and outreach report definitely matters, and I'll get into that and I'll show you that report as well. But when we're thinking about those behaviors that we just spoke about, it's the student incident report. And again, I'll show you what that looks like. So the big difference, while both of those reports should be at the top of your mind, when we're looking at the student incident report, again, we're looking at like incidents like disruptive behavior, lack of compliance with directives. I gave you that example already about declining to leave the course, right? So those are things that you're going to say, you know what, I need someone from student conduct to sit down and have a conversation with this student about this behavior because I've already addressed it and it's not going anywhere. Care and concern, when we start to get into those conversations, that curiosity about the student, you will, and you may find out that they're in need, or sometimes they just come to you and say, listen, I'm struggling to get to campus. That's why I'm coming in late. I need assistance with travel, or, I'm falling asleep in class because like I'm hungry. I have food or housing insecurity, right? All of those things, once you learn that, you're going to use the care and concern report. Getting them connected to our navigators will get them connected to resources inside and out of the campus community. And I'm going to go through the quiz and then I'm going to show you the forms. So I kind of just gave you the answer to this, if you were listening. When a student discloses that they are in need of assistance, such as transportation, food, etc., or displays changes such as fatigue, missing class, etc., who do you connect them to? Laughing emoji, success navigator. All right, everyone was listening. I love it. All right, absolutely. Because even if you send them over to us or public safety, we're just going to send them over to our success navigators. And so they are, we have full-time and part-time success navigators on the 3 main campuses, including evening and weekends. So at any time you learn of this information, you can refer, and there will be someone that can connect with that student and get them connected to resources. And I'll dig a little bit more into them after the quiz. So when we think about the work that they do, I talked to you about the resources for our students, but we also have, as you may know, we don't have a counseling center at CCBC, but what we do have is a relationship with a program called Togetherall. And so our students have access to mental health resources through Togetherall. So if a student is talking about needing some mental health assistance and wanting to get into a counseling relationship, a therapeutic relationship, you can refer them to the College and Community Outreach page, and the link for Togetherall is there. Now, for you, on the other hand, there's some ways that you want to add to your toolkit, sharpen some skills, right? Or just continue to make sure that these resources are widespread to your students. You can also reach out to College and Community Outreach. They have folks who are certified to like train the trainers to do mental health first aid training. And so I know that the institution is paid for a significant amount of spots for folks to be trained. So you can always reach out to them to connect with one of those classes. Or if you just want them to come and visit the class, whether it's in person or virtual, and talk about all the different resources that they have, we can do that. We recently had an incident in a classroom, and the faculty member was like, I'm concerned about the students, and I really want to make sure they get connected to resources. So we had for that class, a success navigator show up and spend some time with the students talking about resources and access, which the faculty member found really beneficial for the students. So they're here for the students, but they're here for you as well. So let's get into the form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share what the student incident report form looks like, and we'll walk through some of this information that you see on the screen. So I'm going to stop sharing the presentation so that I can share the form. Perfect. Okay. So right now, you all should be seeing the student conduct form. Now, we talked about some of the different things that you might encounter in student conduct that's related to student conduct, and we also talked a little bit about the care and outreach. So I'm going to show you both forms. And so it's important that as you look at this form, again, if it's an immediate response, public safety's numbers right there. You also, if you're in the classroom, each of those computers in the classroom, you push the buttons, 2 buttons, calls public safety for you. So you need to fill this out in its entirety: first name, phone number, email, campus location, and the nature of report, student conduct violation. Urgency of report. Now, if this was something like you had a huge fight, blowout in your classroom, I would definitely make that high, right? Anything else I think can be rated at a low or moderate, but I see every report that comes in and they are sent out by the following business day, if not the same business day, depending on the time that it comes in, to start being addressed. Date of the incident, and this is really important because when we're having the conversation with the student, we utilize this information to try to craft that timeline, understanding where they were, what was happening for them prior to during the incident occurring, right? So making sure that's completed and that is timely. So if an incident occurred on Monday, try to get this report into us on Monday, Tuesday at the latest. Sending it into us a week later, it doesn't help us address the behavior quickly. It doesn't allow us to see if there's also, is this behavior continuous in other places, right? Because another faculty member could be dealing with something similar. And then we see both of those reports come in around the same time and we say, okay, there is something much larger going on with the student. So timely reporting is important. And then also the time of the incident. Now, when commotion is occurring, no one's looking at their watch and saying, it is exactly 7:25. I know what's happening in the midst of chaos, right? So give us a good estimate. And then if you need to explain that a little further in your write-up, you can. The locations, we just need to know where exactly that happened. Was it one of the campuses, online, or was this something that happened off campus? So off campus could be they have your cell phone number and they've been calling or texting, right? So you send those screenshots. And right here allows you to be a little bit more specific in what you are sharing with us. This is really important. I get a lot of reports where the name or organization is CCBC, but we're talking about a student. So I actually need the student's name. So let's put that student's name in. You're going to select their role, right? Were they on the receiving end of some type of incident, or were they the one who perpetuated the incident, right? We want to be able to put that information in there. What's their ID number? Now, typically, you'll be able to have a magnifying glass here that'll help you search for their ID number. But if you don't have it for some reason, I will find it. But if you do have it, that would be amazing, right? I don't expect you to have their date of birth. That will populate for me once we have the ID. But however much information here you can fill in makes it a lot easier instead of me needing to search through Banner and everything else to figure out which student, because we have a lot of students with the same name. And the last thing I would want to do is have the wrong student coming in to speak with one of the student conduct administrators and it wasn't them, right? And we've had that experience before. As you scroll down this form, you will begin to see the different code violations. The definitions aren't here, but you can always look at the code of conduct if you wanted to know what the exact definition is. You can select whatever it is that you like here, what you think it is, but as I read the report, I'm going to make the final determination as to what the violation was or alleged to have been. But you'll click one, multiple based on the incident. And this is the important part, and as you can see, it's required. The who, what, when, where, why, and how. Now, one of the phrases I like to use when I'm talking to folks about incident writing is, while your feelings are valid in the write-up, your feelings don't matter. It's facts over feelings, right? Because when we start to insert our feelings into the write-up, we begin to use language that's a little leading, right? And so your feelings are coming out. So you may have felt, let's say you felt disrespected because the student cursed at you, or was using foul language, right? And so you're, instead of saying you'll say things like, the student was aggressive. Well, was the student aggressive, or did the student use foul language? What were the facts, right? And so writing that out, if the student used the B word, the F word, whatever it is, write that out. I'm not going to be offended, but I've heard it all at this stage in doing this work. I've been doing conduct work for almost 10 years now. I've heard it all, and some new things along the way. But be very detailed, right? Who did what? What exactly did they do? Not what you perceive them to have done, not what you feel they have done. What did your eyes actually witness, right? Was there a witness that you spoke to, and what did they tell you? What's their contact information so we can talk to them and confirm that as well? Where did it occur? So as you're writing this, always dig into the who, what, when, where, why, and the how. Okay. And try to remove some of that language. Folks like to make certain descriptors, right? Like, oh, this student is aggressive, or certain language, which often comes off as bias, right? And so myself and my team, we have to remove any possibility of bias to look at just the facts. So you would just make things so much easier by writing the facts over your feelings. When we call you to follow up with you, we can talk about your feelings. But remember, the student has the right to see this report. And so when they see these reports, it really begins to change the way in which they not just view themselves, but view you as a faculty member and view their experience at CCBC, right? So we want to be mindful of what we're putting in writing, okay? Because our students here also love to file impact complaints about everything that I have to respond to. So help us both out. In the incident that you're filing, we're going to ask, does a student know that you're filing a report? And so there's going to be times where, like, if you're needing the student to leave, you could say, like, just want to let you know, I am going to be submitting a report to student conduct, right? We try not to have the student blindsided with not knowing, and then we send them a letter to meet with them, and they're like, what are you talking about? I had an incident with who? What happened? I don't even remember that, right? So if they know that they can expect something to occur, it kind of takes some of that shock out of it, and then they can be better prepared to engage in that conversation with my team and I. Also talk about what measures did you take? Did you need to call public safety? Yes or no? Did you have a prior conversation with this student about the situation? When did you do that? Was there an email attached to that? Go ahead and upload that email to us. Just let us know what you've done in advance of that. And even though it says to mark if you wanted to speak with one of us or not, we're going to call you anyway. So you can check yes or no, but more than likely we're going to give you a call because we may need some additional information from you. And then again here, let them know that you communicated with the student. Basically the same questions over again, kind of confirming that. And so if there's any information that you needed to upload, again, screenshots, if this is academic integrity, uploading your syllabus, their paper that you're referencing, if it was something that was online and they were using like Respondus, then do you have like a clip of the video or at least a link to that video that we can watch? And so this is the space for you to be able to upload all of that. That gives us all the information that we need to review. And if for some reason you forgot to upload things, again, we're going to reach out and we'll be requesting that information. But the more you can give us on the front end, the easier it is for us to adjudicate the case. And then of course here you can always click that to have the copy of the report submitted to you, hit submit, and you'll see a confirmation that you have submitted your report. So those are for incidents, right? And let's say you're in class, or you get an email or text or call from a student, and they start to share with you about, listen, I was just kicked out of my house, or, I've been struggling, really fatigued because I'm hungry, right? I have food insecurity. You're gonna want to go to this report. So I should have showed you this. I apologize. When you go to the student conduct page, you'll see here how I got to the student misconduct form. And this is also how you get to the care referral form. All right. So back to the care referral form. It gives you some information on the front end of when folks are available in other services. So if a student is speaking to you about they're considering self-harm, harm to another person, if they speak to you about domestic violence, sexual assault, right, here are some immediate ways to support them. That is there. You can share that information with them, call for them on their behalf. But then also still submit the report, because we want to be able to follow up and support the student. So when this report is submitted, myself and Dr. Heather Greiner, who's the director of our college and community outreach department, we both read those reports every day, every report that comes in, and we determine, is that going to be something that her navigators reach out to support the students, or is that going to be something that we send to our care team, which is a small collection of staff, faculty and staff throughout the college, mainly staff that serve in support roles. And we look at more high-level crisis situations to see how we can better support the student, whether that is adjustments to classes, whether they need to medically withdraw, whether we need to adjust like the way in which their modality with classes and things of that nature, and trying to figure out how to support them. And so we make those decisions collectively. But either way, whether you're providing this information to the student or you're calling on the student's behalf, please submit this report. It looks very similar to the previous report, right? So nature of the referral, concern for student, general FYI. Again, we read it off. We need to switch to type. We can do that. Date of incident, time, same things. What is your role? Making sure you click that, and if there was any specific location. So was this after class? Was this through email, etc.? Putting in that student's information so that we can find them. And if you need to put additional folks, you can always add another party. And here you talk to us about clicking. What were the concerning situations, right? Was it something academically related? Was it something behavioral related, physical? You notice something like this student would always, appear suit and tie, and then out of nowhere, like the last couple of weeks, they just, look disheveled or whatever that was. And you have those concerns. So you can click that and we will address the needs accordingly. They don't tend to follow up with the faculty member after that. So it is important that you make sure the student knows, like, hey, I'm going to submit a care report. So a navigator is probably going to reach out to you. But the navigator, after they work with the student, is not going to reach back out to you. And so if you want to make sure that that student has had the follow-up necessary to be successful, then we encourage you to engage that student in conversation. Just say, hey, I submitted that report and just want to check in and see how you're doing. If you have any additional support needs, so that we can continue to get you connected. The same thing with the student conduct report. Unless there was harm to self on the student conduct piece, like a harm to you, harm to self, right? Or someone in the classroom, we typically don't share what the outcome is. If it's academic integrity, which we'll get into in a minute, you kind of already know because you tell us, unless it led to a student hearing board where the student was going to be suspended or expelled, then we'd follow up with you on that. So again, making sure that you are providing facts. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you learn in conversation, right? What support measures did you take? So if this was something like the student expressed that they wanted to harm themselves, so we called for help. We called 911 or whatever it is, one of those resources at the top that you called, you would write that information in there so that we know those were steps that you've taken. And again, this is the student aware that you have submitted this form. So you'll go ahead and click that. Because if they're not aware, right, then that kind of helps us pivot the way in which we will connect and communicate with the student. But we don't want them to feel as though, wow, I try to share this in confidence and now everybody knows my business, right? Because sometimes it's really hard to ask for help. And so pride gets in the way, ego gets in the way. So when they finally feel as though, like, hey, I can go ahead and share this information with someone, we want to make sure they don't feel bamboozled, right? So you're just going to finish entering in all the information, any supporting information, very similar to the other form. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing this now. I talked a lot, and I want to pause to see if there's any questions before I move back into the presentation itself. You can unmute, you can use the chat feature, whatever works for you. Right, I'm not seeing any questions about the form at this time. If you think of something after, you can always ask. I'm going to go back to sharing the PowerPoint. All right. So we touched on this already, documenting the student's behavior. And so before we get to that form that I showed you, there's some things that you should do in advance of that, right? First, provide that verbal warning. Like, hey, student B, we've talked about X, Y, and Z already. Let's make sure that, our behavior shifted. And then always follow that, recap that conversation in email. Documentation, 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 right? I literally brought my team this little desk weight that says, but did you document it? Because if you never document it, you didn't have the actual conversation, right? Because as much as we might have a strong relationship with the student, the minute that things don't seem like it's going to go their way, they get amnesia, right? That's been my experience. So once we follow that up with some type of email, like, hey, student B, just to recap, this day and time, we talked about this behavior. This was the agreement. This was the understanding. Thank you very much. So it's there. This way, if it does escalate to you needing to submit a student incident report, you can just attach that email like, we had this discussion already. Formal written warning, also following that up with them, like we talked about on this day, this time we talked about this behavior. Your behavior hasn't changed, just putting you on notice that I noticed you have not shifted your behavior. And then that student incident report, again, facts over feelings and be very detailed. All right. Classroom management versus student conduct. Now, a lot of times this gets kind of mixed up, right? And so there's certain things that you can and should be doing in your classroom, which I touched on some of it already, before it escalates to student conduct, right? And so what I want to do is I actually want to do this together. Because I told you I don't want to talk at y'all all night. I would love for y'all to participate. So I am going to just go to right here. And I would like to hear from you all, even if you want to use the chat feature, that's fine. When you think about your classroom, what do you think is more classroom management behavior that occurs versus something that needs to escalate to student conduct? I'll give an example. And then you tell me if it's classroom management or student conduct. The student cursed in class. Do we think that's classroom management, or does that immediately need to see a student conduct administrator?
The initial incident, I would say classroom management.
Exactly. Yep. Oh, we got something classroom management. Yep. Perfect. Yep. And that's okay. Sometimes this happens at, in an office space as well, right? The student comes in, they're a little angry about something that occurred, and you're saying, well, this student, well, you're rude. There's nothing wrong with having a conversation with the student saying, hey, I understand that this situation may have frustrated you, but maybe we should work to reframe our language. I get cursed at every day in email, right? And so I have to, in that, try to develop the student and not take it personally. I don't feel disrespected in the moment. I'm just like, you're really frustrated, and this is the way in which you express frustration, because maybe you haven't learned other tools to manage that frustration. Oof, it's okay. Again, before this, I'm doing fraternities 40 life. That was like 10 times worse. So I have thick skin at this point. Any other things that may come up for you, whether it's in the office or in the classroom, that you think is like, this may escalate to student conduct? I think this is something that I can initially manage through conversation.
I would say for me, I'm just giving an example. I've never had this happen because I do a lot of the things that you talked about on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like, so my mother has taught at the university level for many years, and so one thing she told me when I first started teaching was, lay out everything in the beginning. So I try, I've always utilized that concept to make sure I lay out, how the class is going to be structured. Community norms is what I call them because it's adult, we're adults, so I don't call them rules. But something that an example is, what if two students, I feel like this would be a student conduct. Two students get into like a heated, no blows up past, but it could have potentially been some blows past. Definitely curse words. There was a heated disagreement, and you don't know if something could happen after the class. I feel like that would warrant a student conduct.
Absolutely, because we do want to take those steps and say, okay, are we cool, or do we need to put some no contact directives in place? Like, do we need to make some switches? Because we don't know what carries on outside of the classroom, right? Yeah.
And then also too, it kind of speaks to what you said about If you didn't document it, it did not happen. And so just to cover, see why, cover your own butt.
Yep.
You want to make sure that you documented that you did witness this. It kind of covers two bases.
Yes, absolutely. Because, and I tell folks, like, even if you're unsure, right? Even if it was a classroom management situation and we go back to that form and you just want to give us a FYI, right? Well, I'm going to read what's in the chat. I used to work at a public library, so there were definitely situations that needed to be de-escalated, being cursed at, fights breaking out. Right. Remaining calm. Exactly. Using de-escalation tactics. Exactly. Not everything needs to arise to calling public safety. But I will share this with you. I had a recent incident where two students got into a very heated verbal altercation, right? And the faculty didn't call for help, didn't call public safety, gave a very vague report, right? And so it required us to do a lot more digging. And we found out there had been prior situations, but again, it wasn't documented. So there was no way for us to kind of step in and find out what was really going on to help I'll almost really like prevent the latest blow up from occurring, right? And so again, if you don't document it, we don't know. And I'd rather have a bunch of FYIs in my inbox than something huge happens. And then in a conversation with you, you're saying like, well, I've been dealing with this all semester. We didn't know all semester. So to us, this is the very first incident as opposed to all of those things in the beginning, having that verbal conversations, following up with that email, right? Doing all of those things. So these are things to think about as it comes up. Is this something that I can manage through de-escalation, through conversation, and reminder of those community norms? Let me change that word here. I want to make sure that I use the correct term, community norms, or is it something that you're like, you know what, this is much bigger and we need to get this student in front of a student conduct administrator? And again, these are some of those incidents where you may need to call us, phone a friend. Should we submit this report? Is this an FYI? Is this a major incident? Is this something that I could have managed at the desk or in the classroom? We're happy to have those conversations. So let me go back to this. Going back to the slide. All right. I think I went too far. Okay. So we went over the completing the student incident report. So I just want to double check with you all if there are questions about the student incident report. What are your concerns or questions?
I don't have any questions specifically. I'm glad you kind of went over the outreach form as well, because I'm not sure how many people were aware that that was a tool that they could use. So thank you for that as well.
No, absolutely, absolutely. You said that there's no questions about that. So again, if you come up with something, let me know. So now let's go more into the academic integrity piece. So by show of reaction, you can either raise your hand or put any kind of reaction out there. How many people understand that when it comes to academic integrity, the sanction is not determined by my office, but it's a faculty-imposed sanction? Like, you all get to determine what that looks like. Awesome. All right. Okay. Some people didn't get the memo, so we have to remind them. So when you're looking at, and I have a flow chart for you as well, because I understand that some people are verbal learners, some folks are visual learners, so I'll share that as well. But when you were looking at academic integrity and something comes up and you had that suspicion, right? You want to make sure that you have sufficient evidence to support your suspicion. And so what I broke down here for you is Like, if based on the information that you have in front of you, they're like, yeah, they definitely violated the academic integrity policy. You're going to want to schedule a meeting with that student. And according to the policy, it's within 10 days of the incident. But the sooner you can have that conversation with the student, the better. And in that meeting, you should be able to show that student the information or the evidence, if you will, of what you have that says, like, this is why I believe that you have violated academic integrity policy. Explain to me what's happening here. And so I've seen where faculty members have said, like, if it was a math course, right, then it was like, okay, you say you didn't cheat, so let's do this math problem together to see if they actually can do the steps, right? It's a lot has been coming to us about the use of artificial intelligence and getting like folks things like ChatGPT to do their assignment, right? Part of your evidence is showing the difference in like previous writing versus that writing. So you don't want to solely rely on like an AI detector, because those aren't really foolproof right now, and folks are really trying to figure out how do we navigate this, because the more information we feed it, the smarter it gets, and we're not catching up to it. So having some additional support there, right? Some folks are putting in like ghost prompts is what they call them. And so it's kind of like a keyword or phrase that's in the prompt that the students can't actually see. So it's kind of like using like your font color is like white, so it matches the background. And so somehow like they copy and paste, and that ends up in the prompt, and ChatGPT answers all the questions. And so those are kind of ways that you like the gotcha moments, right? So you want to utilize that in your discussion with the student. After that, you're going to want to discuss with your coordinator or your department chair what the sanction is, and then you're going to submit that report to us with all of that information that you had, the a recap of the conversation with the student, the supporting evidence that you have, right? And what was the faculty imposed sanction that was agreed upon with your coordinator or department chair, and submit that to us. And then what we'll do is we'll send the student an official notice on your behalf. But with that, they have the right to appeal, and I'll get into that in a few. If you don't have enough support, it's just your spidey senses are tingling, that you can have a conversation with the student, and you can say, listen, I don't have enough information here to move forward with a faculty imposed sanction, but I do have some concerns. So basically, like, let's get it together before you land in a situation that could negatively impact your academic experience here. So, in thinking about what we just talked about, right? When we think about the conduct piece, just so that you know what that process looks like. Once that report is submitted to us, I'm creating that case in our case management system, which is called Maxient, and that's going to a student conduct administrator for an investigation. And so what does that investigation look like? That's going to be talking to the student, talking to you. If there were witnesses around, whether you have folks that can talk to them or the student has folks that wants to speak on their behalf. And our responsibility is taking all of those statements and determining what more than likely occurred. So you'll hear from us a lot the word preponderance, right? Because that's our standard of proof, what more than likely than not. And so that's how we're making the determination. So this goes back to the feelings versus facts, right? Or facts over feelings piece. Because your feelings may say, and I've seen this written, this student doesn't belong here. You need to get rid of the student. Okay, you're leading that with your feelings because in that heated moment, the student calls you out your name. But that's not necessarily going to be the outcome. And so that's why it's important to just put the facts in, and we can always talk about your feelings over the phone or through a scheduled meeting, right, over Teams. They're going to investigate, gather all that information, and from there, they're going to make an informed decision, right? Well, they're going to gather information, they're going to meet with the student and make sure they have the student's point of view because we want to have their voice in the process. Some students choose to participate, some don't. If they do not participate, we still make a determination and send them a notice. So we'll send them an outcome notice, and that'll say, these are the different violations of the code that you've been alleged to have violated based on our investigation. We're finding you responsible or not responsible for one or none or some of those violations. And here are your sanctions, right? So if we think about it in K through 12, like the punishment, right? Or at home, we're thinking with children, we're thinking about the punishment, which are really utilized to develop them. So we have two types of sanctions. It's active and inaction and inactive. And so inactive are things like warnings, probation, things like that, where there's no real act that the student must take, but they've been put on notice that they're not in the best standing with the institution. And then there could be some active sanctions where, depending on what the act was, they are doing some type of service on campus. They have to write a reflection paper, things like that, where they actually have to do something, and they get a deadline in order to complete that. So that's what that letter entails. They will have a period of time where they can appeal that. Now, I typically don't hear cases unless it's a major case. So if the student works with the student conduct administrator, they appeal. I review the work of my team, the statement from the student made in the appeal, which is a written process, and I make the determination if I'm going to uphold, overturn, or alter the outcome of that in any way. And so that looks like saying, I don't see a reason to overturn this. Whatever they said stands. That's the end of it. Or you know what? I think they may have been a little harsh. So instead of putting you on probation, I'm going to knock it down to a warning. Or saying, you know, maybe we're going to just send this back to a review with another student conduct administrator. So I have a little bit of a leniency in the way in which I do that. But I do take a deep look at the work that they've done. And so that just allows our students to have more due process than not, which helps us out in the event that they ever decide they wanted to sue CCBC. Now, this is probably the area that you're most concerned with, as you said in the beginning, that you feel like the things that you'll navigate the most is academic integrity. Similar in some ways, but gets a little bit more complex, right? So that violation is suspected by you, like we talked about earlier. You're gathering that supportive evidence that we discussed earlier, right? And then you're going to schedule that meeting with the student, sit down, get their perspective, have that dialogue. 9 times out of 10, they're going to fold and say, you know what, you're right. I did it. If you address that the right way. You're going to talk with your program coordinator, right? And get that faculty-imposed sanction, make that determination. And from there, you're going to add that information to the student incident report and submit that to student conduct. We'll get that information, say thumbs up. Make sure all that evidence that we talked about earlier is attached to that report. That's important, and we'll get to that in a second. Once we send that notification saying, like, this is your faculty-imposed sanction, that student has a right to appeal, right? So once that student appeals, all the information that you submitted that informed your decision, the students write up of why they're appealing, and then I get a written rationale from my student conduct administrator and, like, I saw all the information the faculty submitted. I either support their decision or I didn't support their decision, but it's not really ours to make. I review all the information, and then I make a recommendation to the academic dean. So I have time to review your work, the work of the additional investigation of my student conduct administrator, and I make a recommendation to the academic dean. The student, as well as you, are notified of my recommendation. It's made clear this is simply a recommendation. the academic dean has the final say, right? Sometimes they go with what I say, sometimes they throw it out the window. But the academic dean gets a period of time to review all of our work, my work, your work, student conduct administrator's work, and they make the final decision. And they will notify all of us of what their decision is. At that point, that process is over for the student. And this is a very, very long process. So again, the more information, conversation, and evidence we have on the front end, the easier it is for us to adjudicate those cases, address any appeals that they may have. All right. I'm going to pause for questions about the flow chart. Okay. Seeing none. Do we have questions overall about anything that I shared this evening? Any concerns, burning questions? Are you all okay? I see Jack is writing. All right, we got some. Okay, no questions there. Oh, you're very welcome. So right now, I'm just waiting for folks to finish typing in the chat to see where we are. Okay, what is the range of time in which an academic integrity investigation and resolution takes? That's a great question, Jack. It's actually probably about 30 days, which I think is too long. So basically, the student gets 3 days from the letter, the outcome letter, to appeal. So if they got the letter today, they have 3 business days to appeal. So was that the 15th, which I think is Friday, right? So they'll have until Friday to do that. The student conduct administrator to do their investigation of all the stuff that you submitted as faculty get 10 days to compile that entire packet together and send over to me. Then I get 10 days, right? I try not to take more than like 3 or 4 days to do all of the work, right? I carve out that time because it's already an extended period of time. And then the academic dean gets 10 days, right? So we're looking at really after that student submits their appeal, there's a 30-day period from once we send that notice to them, about 33 days, once we send that notice to them to the conclusion of the process. It's super, super long. Seems to be on par across institutions, helps to set expectations for all parties. And yeah, it's definitely I think it's something that is across institutions. And I think sometimes it raises some anxiety for students trying to figure out like what's happening. I've seen some students just become so like exhausted by the wait period that they're just like whatever, like they almost give up, right? And so I think there's ways for us to like reduce that at some point, but that's the system that we're working with right now. Let's see, Donna, does the flow chart process also align with the student behavior? Yes, if I go back to this one, right, to the conduct flow chart. Yes. So once that report is submitted, again, we're moving on to that investigation, having those conversations, setting the gathering all of our information on the front end from those who witnessed it, yourself, etc., pulling all of that information together, very much like that academic integrity piece, right? And then meeting with the student. This is all the information I have. Tell me your perspective. Give me your information, right? From there, making a decision on responsibility, and sanction, if applicable, sending them that notice, and then again, the student has the right to appeal. And so then that appeal would come to me. So yes, absolutely does align. Let's see. I got Jack in the chat one more time. You can continue to light up that chat with questions. Can you give any idea of how many conduct or integrity cases you handle each year? So I haven't been there a full year, but I will say this: by the beginning, the first few weeks of the semester, we were almost at, I think we were at like 60 cases within the first few weeks. And so that would be a combination of academic integrity, issues at the testing center, care reports. So we are at this point, we're probably about 200 cases between all the different areas, the different academic areas, the care and concern. And that's not even including all the things that Dr. Griner's area receives, right? Because on a daily basis, we probably get about 15 reports or so from faculty and staff expressing some type of concern for students or learning about student needs. So we're pretty inundated every day. But what I've started doing now that this will be my first full semester, I've been running like monthly reports. And so I plan to put out an end of semester report as well to say, like, this is all the stuff that my team has dealt with. So I'm expecting it to be a couple of hundred cases spanning across the different areas. But thank you for that question, Jack. Yes.
So, just percentage wise, because I'm surprised. Jack said, "Wow," um, for you to say 15 per day. So, if you get, just hypothetically, if you get 15 in one day, is it? And I know every day is different, but is it more outreach or is it more student conduct?
I think a lot more of it is outreach. Because our students are, I'm going to stop. I don't know why I'm still sharing this. I'm going to stop. I think a lot of our students have a lot of needs, right? And I think a lot of it is connected to food and housing insecurity. Those are the things that come through the most. There's also some concern with folks with accessibility needs who may not be connected to our student accessibility services department. And so that really allows Heather's team to do a great job of getting them connected to resources. We also navigate a lot of mental health issues, challenges. And so a lot of that will land with me just because I do lead our care team. And so pulling my folks together to say, okay, how do we help? How do we help? Right? Because we can suggest together all, but if they don't want to go, what else do we do to support them? Behavior. Sometimes it's classroom management stuff. So we're coaching faculty that come when that comes in. Um, but the other is more of some of that disruptive behavior of like I'm coming into the classroom 30 minutes late. Now I'm causing a ruckus. I'm disrupting the curriculum. I'm poking fun at the student, or now I'm just in a verbal disagreement that has taken over the classroom. And so the gamut, it runs the gamut, right? There's never a calm day in conduct. So there's always something happening.
And so two things.
Mm-hmm.
Anna Maria said to my question, do you feel like it's more continuing education reportings or con ed? I mean, continuing education or credit?
Probably more credit. I haven't seen much. I haven't seen much from Con Ed, and I don't know if that's because they're just perfect people or if you all just haven't had all the tools that you need to be able to reach out to our office. So hopefully this conversation will help. Not that I'm asking for more work, but I want to make sure that we are fully supporting you as you continue to elevate our student population.
Yeah, so this, as you know, this webinar is recorded. So all of this good information will be shared with folks. One quick question. I was recently trained in mental health first aid, And
Mhm.
I knew about the 988 telephone number or extension. But when you went to your site, do any of those numbers, the 800 numbers, do they coincide with the 988? Or is that something you want to add to that?
That is probably something we need to add. 'Cause I'm not sure if they coincide with the 988
Are you
number.
familiar with 988?
Mm-mm. I'm
Okay,
scheduled
so
to take the mental health first aid
on
training
the
next
14th.
month. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 988, it pretty much takes you directly to crisis. And I feel like you had something about the National Crisis Center,
Mm-hmm.
but it's monitored per county. And so it takes you directly there without someone having to remember, like a long telephone number. So maybe just
Yeah.
something to add. Hmm.
Yeah.
It
This
may
is
go
what
to
should
that
share. Yeah.
crisis helpline, either the crisis helpline or the National Suicide Prevention line. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm scheduled to
Yeah,
take my training next month. I got the whole team. I was like, listen, we deal with way too much to not be trained in this. So let's go.
right. All right, that's all I have.
Okay. Um, so are there any other questions? And if not, I'll pull this slide back up just with my contact information. Do not hesitate to reach out, whether it's a phone call, an email. I will get back to you. We want to make sure that we're fully supporting you um, in the work that you do. We can't do it without you, right? Um, but do not hesitate to reach out with any further questions. I see something happening in the chat. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Well, all
So I
right,
want
y'all.
So I want to once again thank you so much, Dr. Wright, for coming to speak with us. And everyone, stay tuned for our next webinar, which will be sometime in late January, possibly early February. So thank